So we have Monica Guzman on today. Monica, can you give us a quick intro on who you are and where you're joining us from?
Yeah, I'm joining you from my basement. I tend to work from home, which is actually awesome, and my 9-month-old son is napping upstairs as we speak. So I am a columnist for the Seattle Times and for GeekWire weekly, and Sunday Seattle Times, and then pretty much any day on GeekWire, you never know. And I write about issues in digital life, so the intersections between technology and our ordinary lives, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, and I just want to read off some of the awards, because I know Monica will be modest about this. She's been named one of the top 100 women in Seattle and Seattle Technology, one of Pointers Institute 35 social media influencers, and one of the Society of Professional Journalists Quill Magazine's 20 journalists to follow on Twitter. That's just some of many. And so it's really impressive. And my first question is, do you have a secret success potion, and can we buy a bottle of it?
Yeah, it's funny, I've gotten that question for a long time, because I started on Twitter back in 2007, and it was just for fun, and the same with Facebook. And I just sort of happened to be one of the early crop of journalists to use social media for journalism, and to end up having a voice there. But a lot of it was I just did for fun, and so it's really interesting to be asked, what was your secret potion? Because I never had one. But I understand that these days social media is a lot more of an art, a lot more of a process, and there are best practices. And among the best practices that I think just work, really well is just be real. Something feels fake, it probably is, so back up, try again. Usually, be positive. That doesn't mean be fake, but be positive. That's the emotion that tends to go well on social media. Social media is a very emotive space. But at the same time, I also want to say, be real. So if something negative is driving you, then be honest about it and try to find some way to share. And beyond that, I think it's just be open. I think conversations that you start on social media that already have all the answers, then they're not really conversations. So why would you even begin? So yeah, I think be open, be honest, be real are good ways to sort of feel your way around the space.
That's great. And for those who are joining us and watching us, you can tweet Monica some questions live at the hashtag I'm a Globalist, and we are pulling those questions off of Twitter. And really, this is like great advice for someone who is like an individual creative person on Facebook, for someone who works in a nonprofit or a business or something. And I want to know from you some tips on like, what have you seen that's really impressive on social media or in technology in the last year? Like, what's really stuck out as a really interesting trend or something you've been really impressed by?
Oh man, so many things. Hold on. Oh gosh. Well, I'm very interested in the movement to track. So I'm actually not wearing it now, though maybe you can see the tan that I have from my Nike Fuel Band. But the Nike Fuel Band is one of a family of gadgets that are they're wearable technology, and you can begin to track things and sort of measure things. So you see, I see a really cool trend towards self-improvement via technology, via tracking certain things. I think that's kind of neat. There's a lot of, you probably saw Vine. Do you know what Vine is? Pop up in the last year. Vine is a 6-second video app, and it's very, very short. But like all things on social media, creative parameters, like creative constraints are really interesting. Twitter was 140 characters. People said, you can't say anything. It turns out you can. And you can actually do a lot with 6 seconds of video, and that's kind of cool. In general, I see video meaning more and more and more and more. And people have been saying this for years. Video is going to take over, video is going to take over, and it never really has. It's been a big presence, and it is getting more and more there. But I think it's about to have another moment, if it isn't having it right now, where video is just so easy, so mobile, so accessible that all sorts of messages, including social media messages, will probably gravitate a little more toward video and other sorts of media. So those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Interesting. I'm curious about the video part of it. And what do you mean? What do you think that means for journalists who are on social media, or for media makers, and that movement towards video, especially that kind of short form Vine video? What does that mean for other media makers and for your job?
Well, I think what ends up happening a lot with how social media has exploded journalism, including lots of different voices, is that anybody can be a witness to news. So anybody can take the photo that ends up, having been the only photo about that moment, and that photo spreads and becomes the root of the story. So with video, I think the thing that has already happened, it'll happen more, is those raw moments that are the seeds of news stories, or the seeds of really momentous events that somebody captures on video and begins to spread. So I think as journalists, we just have to remember that even though journalists are often filters for information, that we also have to be mindful about what are the raw things we see that we can share in a raw form with our audiences that doesn't skew the story. You probably remember a couple weeks ago, of course, the Boston Manhunt.
I was going to ask you about that, yeah.
Crazy, right? Yeah. And there, the raw feed that so many people tuned into was the police scanner. And that's something journalists have always tuned into, very raw, very unfiltered. And people, started listening, but it's so raw that the police are just trying to communicate and do their jobs. They're not giving us contextualized news. And for a lot of people, it was their first experience with the scanner. They didn't fully understand what the consequences can be of believing every little thing too much. And so we saw a lot of misinformation. But I kind of believe people learn as they go. I think the only way that you learn to be a journalist is by doing it. And I think everybody is getting the chance to learn how to be a journalist.
Yeah, and what do you, in that specific case for the Boston shootings, what do you think was some of the implications about the kind of the witch hunts that happened online and on Reddit of people kind of pulling apart photographs and kind of doing their own detective work and that all spreading out through social media? What was your reaction to all of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I sort of shared the general reaction, which was, creepy, let's not get too vigilante with all this stuff. At the same time, I really appreciated where that came from. I think what's happening with a lot of people who follow news these days is their question isn't, ooh, I hope somebody does something about this. It's, what can I do about this? And in particular, the social news site Reddit has been really, really good at sharing actionable information. So the fact that someone on Reddit saw that there were suspects on the loose, that there was media all around, probably public media, the fact that that person said, I wonder what we can do, is actually really cool. It turned out to be very complicated, and it turns out to be a very sensitive thing that you really need experts to work on, and people who think very hard about what they release and when. So the Reddit community did it in a very reckless, quick way. Again, I come back to, I think we learn as we go. I don't think that's going to happen again, but I'm not gonna condemn the instinct to want to do something. I think that's a great instinct for people.
Interesting. We do have a question that just came in through Twitter, and just to update for those who are joining us, we're talking with Monica Guzman, who's a tech columnist for the Seattle Times and for GeekWire. Monica, this is a question from Twitter. How do you communicate complicated social issues in 140 characters?
You send a lot of tweets. I know, actually, the main way you do it is you use those 140 characters to give the teaser headline and then link to a post where you actually do explain in depth what's going on. There has always been, throughout the history of human communication, the tendency to sloganize, right? We need our sound bites, and that's because those things are what carry. They will always be what carries. And Twitter is great proof of that. If you can come up with the right 140-character teaser for your explanation of a deep social issue, then people will go read your explanation of a deep social issue, and it will spread by those people who are so moved that they want to continue to spread it. So we'll always need the headline, but that doesn't mean that it stops at the headline. That said, for a lot of people, it does stop at the headline. It's very annoying. I can't tell you how many emails I get from readers, or even sometimes comments on the articles where I'm like, you just read the headline, didn't you? If you had read, that fourth paragraph, you'd know that I addressed exactly what you're complaining about. Mm-hmm. So, it's kind of a symptom of our society. We don't have a lot of time, and we have a lot we need to do. So I understand it. But anyway, yeah, the way you communicate complex ideas in 140 characters is you lead people somewhere else. Yeah, interesting. Let's see, another question from Twitter. And for those who want to ask, you can tweet Monica a question at hashtag I'm a Globalist. We have, how much tweeting is too much tweeting? Depends. I mean, how often do I usually tweet overnight? Never, right? Like when people are asleep, I do not tweet, except for the night of the Boston Manhunt. and I tweeted an insane amount of times. And it was okay because it was a very big live conversation. It was hard to go anywhere in social media without somebody talking about that. So there is no consistent rule. If you are somewhere that is very interesting, if you are at an event or experiencing or witnessing something that is very interesting, people are going to want to hear from you a lot. Most of the time, meh, it's kind of ordinary time. It kind of depends on, well, first it depends on the time you have, because a lot of people underestimate the time it takes to be on social media. And if you have something like, I know some companies and brands have quotas where they're like, I've got to tweet 5 times a day, I've got to tweet 5 times a day. If you're on a quota system, then you need to stop and take the time to make yourself have 5 tweets a day. I tend to be more sort of flowy. I mean, on really low days, I might have 2 or 3 tweets. On big days, I might have 20. And that seems to be okay. So a lot of it is the tone you set and the precedents you set for yourself. If you're going off the wrong way, you'll probably know.
Interesting. That's good advice. Again, we're talking with Monica Guzman, tech columnist, and let's see, we have another question from Twitter. I'm curious about Twitter not just as a tool, but as its own art and medium. Got any examples in your own world?
As its own art and medium. Twitter, examples of, Okay, so wait, is this person asking about artistic uses of Twitter?
I think, yeah, it says it's art/medium. So I think, yeah, some artistic uses of it.
Well, I guess I'll name a couple that come to mind that I think are really fun, and I can't, you'll have to Google this.
Okay.
But there is a Twitter account that, I think it's just called Modern Seinfeld, but each tweet reads like the TV guide description of a Seinfeld episode if Seinfeld were running today. It's hilarious. So, like, Kramer got unfriended on Facebook, and whatever, like George did this, and Jerry meets a girlfriend who does something, who shares photos of her friends on Facebook when the photos are really bad or something like that. I really like that. There was a lot made of, like, this was a couple years ago, but people started creating accounts pretending to be Mad Men characters. That was really fun. You'll run into all kinds of very poetic things. People have written novels via Twitter. Communities have come together, and with tweet after tweet, sentence after sentence in a novel. There's a lot of really interesting artistic uses.
That's awesome. Cool. Okay, so let's see. Another question from Twitter. What's like the biggest social media fail that you've seen this year?
Well, in a general sense, security. Was it Burger King that was hacked by somebody making it McDonald's? I think it was the Burger King account was hacked by someone who started tweeting on the Burger King account that Burger King had been bought by McDonald's, and it was just this thing. And it took embarrassingly long for Twitter to shut down the account in time for everybody to figure out what was going on. Turns out there's some drop-dead simple ways that bad people can fish for your social media password. And I can sit here and kind of talk about how important it is, but I have no idea how to protect myself, with like that kind of tech security. It's a hard thing, and a lot of people have no clue how to do it. And it seems like only a few people really understand how it works and how to protect themselves. And it seems like it's already kind of been the year for hacking. We've had a lot of hacking stories in the news. So watch for that to become an even bigger deal and get in the way of some of the fun we've been having.
Yeah, and we even have the news itself being hacked with the AP accounts too recently.
That was crazy, right? Yeah. The Department of Justice, what was it? It came out that they looked at. Oh, right. Never mind. The AP Twitter account was hacked.
Right. Yeah.
That was a couple weeks ago, and it was by the Syrian Electronic Army or something.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and they put out a tweet on the AP's own account saying that the president had been injured in an attack on the White House or something, and the stocks plummeted.
Right.
Recovered, but plummeted. And yeah, there was panic, at the AP and a lot of places going, yeah, we need to tighten up the hatches because this is crazy.
Yeah. My question I have for you is about women in media and technology and career professionals, and what advice you have for women who are going into these careers and kind of like handling the trollers and the haters online. And we see cases like Anita Sarkeesian, who was pretty viciously attacked online for doing a Kickstarter about women in games. What sort of advice do you have, or what's your reaction to all of this?
This is a really hard one because this is one of those issues where in our heads we go, well, women are like this and men are like that, but we don't want to say those things out loud because it makes them true, and we're just like, that may not be 100% true, and you don't want to generalize. It's a minefield of assumptions and stereotypes. That said, I will say this. I do think women tend to take things more personally than men. I think we just do. It doesn't mean every woman does. I think a lot of women do. So my suspicion has been that some women have a harder time with trolling and with comments and with, frankly, a lot of these people that are online and just kind of attack. They're just doing it for kicks, and they're not, it's just not something you need to take seriously. But again, I think for women it's particularly hard. And I don't know how you think your way out of it. I've tried. And really the only thing that works for me is time. So over the years that I've been doing this, I started sort of writing in a big way online in 2007. God, I mean, that first year, I can't tell you how often things brought me to tears. I'd just be home and be like, ah! I'd read one comment and it would ruin my day. And I look back at those comments now, I'm like, what? That was just some dude. Like, who cares? It's just some idiot. And now I think I'm a lot better at picking apart the idiots from the people who are really criticizing with good points and they're trying to make your work better and appreciating those people. So that kind of criticism can still hurt, but if you're strong and if you care about what you do, you take it as a lesson and you grow from it. But I still have trolling kind of moments where, I have to kind of turn to my husband and be like, honey, it's okay, right? Like what this person said, he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. Okay. So, look for support if you need to look for support. Go have a cup of tea. Don't let yourself ruminate and dwell. That's the worst thing you can do. It really can ruin your day.
Mm-hmm. That's good advice. So we're talking with Monica Guzman, the tech columnist with the Seattle Times and GeekWire. And I have one final question. So this whole thing is for Give Big, where Seattle Foundation is stretching all the donations given to the Seattle Globalist on this day. So we're asking all of our guests, why do you love the Globalist? Why is it important to you?
Mm-hmm. There's so many reasons. I'm just gonna think out loud on one that's sort of complex, but it's this. I've been thinking about this a lot. I think that a sense of identity is very, very important, particularly to young people these days, but really to everybody. And that's because so many of us are now creating and managing online doppelgangers, profiles, Facebook, Twitter, all these things. We're all representing ourselves, and so the things we like and the things we associate with are very important. Well, Seattle does have a lot of international connections. It has a lot of ties to the rest of the world. And I get excited when, as Seattleites, we explore more parts of our identity than just the hipster Microsoft part. And I think the international part of the Seattle identity is very interesting. And I think a lot of us haven't and haven't really explored it. And it's kind of it's all around us, and it's just in our backyard. Not to mention, the demographics of the city are changing so much, and we're getting so much more diverse and so much more international. So the Seattle Globalist is the place that's exploring that, exclusively, and I think it's wonderful. So I absolutely encourage people to support that if that rings true to you and it's something you want to see happen.